Good morning. Good morning. We've continued and completed the 5-day ring. I feel like this is the last stone on Thanos' gauntlet. We are here on a Friday. Ron, how you doing?
We're doing great. Neither one of us worked today. We got to sleep in. We started a show yesterday. We started a show late today. I got a promotion at work yesterday. Your boy is doing well. How about you?
I don't know about this sleep in portion. I am very happy for you.
Wait,
It just
you had to sleep all the way in until 6 a.m.
yeah,
today.
it just turned 6 a.m. where I'm at. But I am good, man. We got a great show for y'all today, as we know. Camp opened yesterday, and we brought a special guest from camp. You've asked for him, you demanded for him, you were thinking about it, even if you didn't say it. My guy Anand Adari is back, so let's have him jump in here and get into it. How you doing?
What's up, fellas? Long time no see.
I know, man. It's been way too long. An annual tradition like no other. The exclusive camp report, man. How was it yesterday?
It was electric, man. I mean, we had a buddy of yours that actually came up. He was next to Dan. Came and said, "Hey," he was like, shouted out the show. He loves watching you guys, as do I, of
It
course.
was our guy Terry T. I actually have a picture from camp from Terry, probably my favorite picture of the day. Our guy Terry T with the SFE guys. Like, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Our guy Terry from the college football stop there with Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate at camp yesterday representing for SFE. So definitely wanted to share that picture and give a shout out to my guy Terry.
Yeah, man. It was an awesome time. It was a little bit different than last year. I think people kind of saw what the experience looked like the year before, decided that they wanted to travel. I know we had people from Nashville, we had people from, there was a guy that came in from Houston, Texas. So it's kind of becoming if you can't make it to an Ohio State game, because so many of those Saturdays in our fall get booked up real quick. If you can't make it to a game, it's kind of become I can make it to one of these 4 open practices every year. And so I think it's going to become and grow. And every year that they continue to do this, I think it's going to become a bigger and bigger event.
Were you
Yeah.
surprised that they decided to do this again with the uncertainty at quarterback? Kind of
Fuck
without a
no. Come on. Fuck no.
all
They
about the
will take
money.
any dollar you give them, brother. They'll be selling. I mean, we're gonna have fifth string offensive tackles selling hot dogs in the parking lot for $15 a pop for NIL in 3 years. Like, let's not tell them that they won't take any opportunity to collect your $20 or in this case 50. So, I'm not surprised at all. I think that they're gonna try and make as we kind of go into this player mobilization, NIL era, whatever you want to call it, the brand is going to become as much about the individual players as it is Ohio State. And I think that's where you kind of see some value gained in, getting a chance to take pictures with these guys and talk to them for 20 minutes. So I think that's super interesting in terms of how we going forward look at college football players. But yeah, I really do think that this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what they're going to continue to offer.
You noted that this is becoming sort of a fan tradition. Do you feel like the fan experience has evolved since last year, and as they continue to do this year over year, has it changed at all? The experience there?
Yeah, so I mean, it seems to be much more regimented. Last year felt like very much, hey, come watch us practice. This year it kind of seemed like more of an event. There was like a Raising Cane's booth, 97.1 was there. You've got, a bunch of little things. And I think as it grows and as more and more people realize, hey, this is your opportunity. I know, I'm not a big signature guy. Like, that's not really something that I care about all that much. But if you're a memorabilia person, where else are you going to be able to go get the entire 2024 Ohio State roster to sign stuff? You had guys like Trey Henderson that were sitting there for an hour and a half at the end of practice signing for everybody. Marv did the same thing last year. And so if whether you go one day or you go all 4 days, that's just access that, unless you're a media member that follows the team on the beat or you're involved with the program in some way, you're just not going to get. And so I think it doesn't necessarily replace going to the shoe and watching them play. But if the personal aspect of getting to know some of these guys is a big part of why you follow the program, then that's definitely one of the events that you want to go to.
Yeah, most definitely. Let me do a house cleaning real quick. Shout out to my guy Charles Green. It's the first one in the chat today, and make sure y'all like that video. I wanted to ask a question. Obviously, you were there and you were around the other fans who got to come to practice. A lot has been said about the energy around this team, and everybody's expecting a natty. Is that what you feel from the other fans coming to practice? Does it feel like this is a special time, or this is the time where you need to go see this team because they're going to be holding up a trophy by the end of the season?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've never had this many moving pieces. You bring in Caleb Downs, you bring in a Quinshon Judkins, you bring in a Julian Sayin, a Seth McLaughlin. You look at all of these pieces individually, and actually after practice there was like a coaches luncheon where Ryan spoke for a while, and he talked about how when they were looking at these quintessential reload programs like the Alabamas of the world while Saban was there. Clearly, Georgia's in that mode now. You're trying to open windows every single year. And they felt that, the way that we had spent money before was one thing. I truly believe, you can talk to any Ohio State fan about this. Watching Michigan win a natty did something to us. And the thing is, it got our boosters worried about winning on the field instead of getting their names on buildings. And so the money is pouring in. And you can kind of see and watch, it's not about the caliber of player. We've always been able to go get 5-star players, but they supermarket swept the transfer portal. And it was just, we've never seen anything like that. You look at the class that's coming in next year. Obviously, there's going to be a lot made about, what this year's team can be. But when you look at kind of what they are on paper, this is Ohio State's super team. 2015 felt like a very organic run. A lot of players developed. You had 3 stars, 4 stars, became 5-star caliber players, through years of coaching. Inherently different because they just said, fuck it. We're going to go. We want the mercenaries. We'll take the guns for hire. And it's obviously a very different plan than we've ever used before because it really hasn't been available. But yeah. I think that when you kind of watch them play, you can tell that there's a different edge to this team that last year's team had defensively, but offensively, so much of what we wanted to see was some kind of identity established. And, we were waiting basically through Michigan State for this team to try to figure out, do you want to be a ground and pound team? Do you want to throw the ball 45 times a game? What do you do best? And unfortunately, we never got the answer to that question. This year, I think it's significantly different. When you watch them, it's going to be run, and run some more.
Now, I feel left out because I'm the only person who hasn't seen this guy in person. Him and Ron just text all the time. They've had conversations. You got to see him yesterday. Chip Kelly is now at Ohio State practice. I mean, Chip, man, if you see this, man, reach out to me on Twitter. Like, we got to get talking because I can't be the only one left out here. I want to start there since you talked about the offense. What is the energy you felt around Chip Kelly? What did you see? What did you feel? Did you see a sense of difference in Ryan Day or the quarterbacks? Just give me your thoughts about that.
It's super interesting because I don't think it's a dynamic that you don't often see. You don't get that kind of relationship. You can work under somebody for 5 or 10 years, but their relationship goes so much more back into when Ryan was a kid. And, he played QB for Chip. Chip's been his mentor his entire life. That's not somebody, it's not it's not Urban Meyer turning over the offense to, a coordinator casually. The fact that Chip Kelly can be an OC at Ohio State is insane. If rewind the clock 10 years, it's a fever dream. You couldn't get away with that in NCAA 14. There's no way that this should be possible. And yet, look, we were staring down the gun for 2 or 3 weeks of Bill O'Brien, Ohio State offensive coordinator. And, how different does this team look with Chip Kelly as their OC? I think, first of all, you have Ryan no longer worried about play calling. I'm sure he has ultimate veto power. There was a question asked in the coaches' luncheon yesterday about whether Chip will be in the booth or whether he'll be on the field. And Ryan kind of hinted at the fact that he'll probably be up in the booth just because it's a different view. Ryan will see everything field level. Chip can see everything from up top. He kind of likened it to playing a video game when you're up there. And so, again, the sticks are going to be Chip's for, the controller to the Ohio State offense. But I think ultimately Ryan has the timeout button. So It'll be interesting to watch.
You talked about Chip and his arrival since getting to Ohio State. How did that change Ryan Day's interaction with everyone at practice? Did it feel like Ryan Day had more of a 360 view of the program, being able to step away from the offense and the quarterbacks yesterday? Do you feel like you saw a different Ryan Day out there with the addition of Chip Kelly?
I think he was less focused on the intimate details of the offense. He was spending a lot of time with the defense. Obviously, he's going to spend a lot of time with the QBs, but he wasn't obsessing over every detail in the way that he used to, only because he has someone that's probably even more obsessed with the details than he could ever be in Chip. The man does not like recruiting. That's well known. But when it comes to X's and O's and creating little margins where you win, Ohio State's not, 20% away from national titles. It's that 1% or 2% that you need in critical moments, whether that's, in Ann Arbor or whether that's, against Georgia in the late game drive. It's the little things that compound over time, and you're trying to get 1% to 2% better every year. And I think that when you get someone in like a Chip Kelly that Ryan implicitly trusts, there's so much built in there that you can't really quantify. If we had like a Billy O'Brien, I'm sure he would have done a fine job, but it's not the same. There's no trust building required. So you're looking at an offense that basically two guys that have known each other for 35 years are basically saying, hey, do we want to run this or do we want to run that? They see the game very similarly. So even though it's going to be Chip Kelly's offense, it's really the Ohio State offense with a few wrinkles thrown in here and there. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what the run game looks like.
Can I piggyback on that real quick? We talked about it. It was probably Monday or Tuesday. Ron brought the graphic of Chip Kelly's success at UCLA, and obviously going back to the Oregon days. And I made the point that since Jim Knowles has gotten here, it's really been the other side of the coin that's really cost us. It's felt like Ryan Day's offense hasn't got going, or when we needed it, hasn't scored enough points. Do you feel like Chip is that other perfect side of the coin where it's like, okay, now we can kind of even the playing field. Now we can feel like, okay, we can both go score points and we can both have a defensive struggle and win both those games? Because I felt like under Ryan Day, really outside of that Georgia performance a couple of years ago, a lot of times his offense has left some desire going into the Michigan games and stuff like that. So you do feel like Chip balances the table in that matter?
Yeah, I think, any true national championship team, any team that's won a national championship historically, has had to win both ways. You need your offense to win game. You need to win a shootout or two, but you also need your defense to show up for you and win games when it's ugly. I'm reminded of Northwestern a couple years ago when CJ ran the ball, what was it, like 13 or 14 times, which we had never seen him do. You're going to have to win ugly games like that because we play where we play. It's the Midwest. It's cold. It's wet. It's rainy in November. They're not all going to be Michigan State 56-0 wins. Like I wish they would, but they're not all going to look like that. I think one thing that we definitely should discuss in terms of, what the offense and the defense looks like is when you look at a Michigan, when you look at a Penn State and Oregon, the teams kind of at the top of what we project the Big Ten to look like. Most of them don't have an elite both sides of the ball like we do. The one team that sticks out there is obviously Oregon. But we relied way too much on our defense to save huge games last year, which, again, going into last year, we talked about how much we hoped that the defense could save us if needed, and they did their damn best. But you got to give – the offense has to do something. The 3-and-outs can't happen. The stalled drives at midfield can't happen. And I think that so much of it is going to be made about who plays quarterback. I don't think it matters, truly. You're going to need – probably 4 to 5 drives from them this entire season that are actually going to matter. The rest of them are going to be, it's pretty easy to pilot what Chip and Ryan are going to give whoever starts at QB.
Before we jump into the QB battle and some of the player things, last year we asked you about the coaching staff and who was the most vocal coach on the field at practice. And your answer last year is no longer on the staff. So I have to ask you, who's the new most vocal coach on the coaching staff?
Oh, it's Carlos Loughlin. It's the guy.
Perfect hire.
He's sitting there, God bless him, James Peoples ran something, and he was just sitting there chewing him out 3 feet from us, for like a minute and a half, made him run through the drill again and again and again. But he brings an energy, and it's very different than last year. There was an energy last year. I think anytime you have a team that you think can win 10 or 11 games and have a special season, there's a certain energy that all of those guys feel. It's not like we're trying to go 6-6. There's a different expectation, but this year it really feels like everybody in that program really truly believes we're going to leave it all out there and we are the best team in America. Last year, I think they thought they might be. This year, I think they're coming into it saying we are.
Do you see a different? Does it feel like there's a different level of confidence around the entire program?
Yeah. Yes. So top down, right? Ryan Day and his remarks at that at the luncheon we went to yesterday. Part of his opening remarks were it's 30 days to Akron. It's 121 days till the team up north and 157 to the net. That was involved in that speech that he gave. So it's not just they're not running from it. Last year it was, hey, we'll take it a game at a time. We need to beat that team up north. Michigan game was obviously of paramount importance. This year they're not running from it's the natty. That's what we want. And he went on to say a lot of things about how important it is to win the Big Ten, and I don't disagree with him. It's just we're in a new world where there are going to be teams that win national titles without winning their conference, and I think it's going to be strange to watch that happen over and over again. Obviously, it's happened in the SEC a couple times. But other than that, we haven't really seen another conference do it. And again, you have an Ohio State and an Oregon this year. One of them's not going to win the Big Ten title, and they're absolutely still going to be a national championship contender. So I think, when you look at the landscape of what college football looks like, there are probably 4 teams that you've batched at the top, whether it's Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Oregon. Those, I think, are the 4 where you look at roster, top to bottom, and you're saying, yeah, not only do they have the talent, but they also have the depth to deal with the running back injuries and the tight end injuries, offensive line, defensive line that you're going to have to deal with throughout a season that has as many tough games as the Big Ten and the SEC are going to throw at you.
So it seems like all chips are in the center of the table. It's an all-in type of season for the Buckeyes. You noted earlier, you think that multiple quarterbacks can get it done. Is this a true quarterback battle? Do you feel like there's still a decision to be made, or do you think we're just going through the motions?
I think we're going through the motions. I think we know exactly what Devin Brown is. And I mean, internally, right? We haven't gotten to see him under the bright lights. Again, we've seen Will Howard in the bright lights in a purple uniform. That doesn't mean anything here. That's great. Congrats. We've seen you basically carry a team to a Big 12 title. What does that mean when we're playing against Georgia? Nothing. It means nothing at all. It means you have experience in a 60,000 seat stadium, which is good. No argument here. But the difference here between what we have in Will Howard and what we had at QB, gosh, the last quarterback that we had that had real true starting experience of that caliber was JT Barrett. And there is a certain ease that you had as an Ohio State fan, knowing that 3rd and 2, he'll find a way. He'll sacrifice his body to get that done. It's a very similar. And now I'm not suggesting Will Howard is the same body type because, dear God, he looks like a defensive end. It's not anything that we've ever had at QB. I think the most comparable one is probably Card Hill, but moves entirely different. I just don't see a scenario in which Will Howard is not the week 1 starter. And if he struggles, then I think Devin's going to get a shot. The break glass in case of emergency, Julian saying, folks, it's not happening this year. I would love to see it, but it's not happening this year. It's going to be one of those 2 the entire way.
So you do still think the door may be cracked for Devin Brown? Because you mentioned Will Howard, and then the name that you brought up was JT Barrett. And in hindsight, if you look back, I don't know how many Buckeye fans believe that they get it done in the last national championship without Cardell Jones being able to stretch the field. Do you believe that Will have similar limitations to JT with the ability to push the ball down the field? And do you feel like that could be something that may hinder this team? I know they're completely loaded on the defensive side of the ball. Do you feel like this team is more talented defensively, that even though maybe we wouldn't have got it done with JT in the past, that this team could get it done with a JT Barrett?
Yeah, if you just basically insert, your average Ohio State QB play over the last, let's just say since Urban took over, you just take 2011 to now, whatever your average Ohio State QB season looks like is good enough to win a national title. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to need more than that in certain games. There are going to be moments where you need your quarterback to be a dude. And it's not, it's not week 1 at Akron. Nobody cares. Like, we're all going to sit there and we're going to watch that game. That game is going to be over by the 3rd snap. Nothing meaningful will be gained from that other than, hey, the fellas got out there and sweated it out a little bit, jogged around. There's nothing to be gained from that. It's when we play at Oregon is when you'll find out something about what this team is made of offensively, because defensively, I think we know it's like, last year's defense was incredible. It's like this year's defense is like adding Caleb Downs to last year's defense is like gifting Thanos angel dust. Like, it's absurd. Just watching him out there, he's the best player on the field.
I mean, and it's like we changed the sliders for speed on our linebackers by like 10.
Yeah. If they're going to be wrong, they're going to be wrong fast.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like that's a perfect place to go. What did you see out of the linebackers? I mean, we're going to see 3 new faces out there. I mean, familiar faces, but they are going to be new for whoever starts at linebacker this year. What did you see out of the new faces in the linebacker room?
It goes, so much of it is, it's interesting for us because we campaigned for Sonny Styles so hard over and over and over again. We wanted to see CJ, obviously Cody coming back is a big deal for us, but we wanted to see that kind of rangy athleticism applied at linebacker in a way that we just didn't have for a while. Tommy was a great player for us for a long time, still a great player, but like, they're not the athletic freaks that a Sonny Styles is. And so it's interesting to watch them play linebacker, that unit in tandem, simply because what they have in front of them and behind them allows them to do whatever the fuck they want. They can do literally anything, because when you have, it's like watching JT and Jack are obviously incredible players, super gifted, both probably going to be first-round NFL players. Then you get one level beyond them and you look at the athletic freaks that Sonny Styles and CJ are. And it's like, wow, these are first round NFL players. Behind them are 2 freak athletes that Ohio State's probably never had at backer. Like Ryan Shazier, maybe the last one that's really in that mold. Then you go one level deeper and you look at Iggy and Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock, Jermaine Matthews. And, we've seen Lathan, but all of this is going on. You're looking at this defense where you're like, Jesus, they're good. And the guy at the very end of the defense that wears number 2 is so far and away the best player on the field that it looks like he's playing a video game. It doesn't look real.
It's hard to believe, especially with the way that defense played last year, that we're going to add a Caleb Downs. We're going to get faster at linebacker. We're going to get more experienced at cornerback, because, we're returning so much on this team, and it feels like we leveled up even with the departures of, generational talent like Tommy Eichenberg, 5th round pick out here representing for the Buckeyes on defense. Not too many people drafted him and Mike Hall holding it down. But, it's great to know that you have talent like Sonny Styles. You have a guy like Cody Simon that I feel like people forget about, was a top 100 recruit, one of the top linebackers in the country, and had injuries derail the early parts of his career. A lot of people talked about him being maybe a step slow and not really even adding much of a boost speed-wise when he comes in for Steele or a Tommy. But now that he's healthy, you see the athletic testing scores inside the Woody and his splits, his 10-yard splits, his 20-yard splits, his shuttle scores. The guy's out there moving. I bumped into him at the student appreciation practice, and I told everybody, I was like, I don't care if Cody Simon goes out there and is the worst player we've ever seen put on an Ohio State jersey. I'm not talking shit, because if I ever run into him, I don't want any problem, bro. You're the best. Like, get him a fucking tree in Buckeye Grove, bro. I have no smoke.
It's eye-popping, and, obviously it's going to be a work in progress throughout the season for all of these guys to play together, having new faces at linebacker and Caleb back there basically calling his own shots. It's going to take them a little while, I think, to evolve into the version of this that you want to see. But it really does. The thing it reminds me so much of is like the Urban Meyer Florida Gators defenses, where it's just like, holy shit, they're all moving at a different, like did they ingest meth before this? They're all moving at a different speed than everybody else. And so, it was fun to watch the offense try to figure that out. But man, I mean, if you have to win games 10-7, you got the defense to do it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of compound V going around, and this is just music to my ears because, like you said, I haven't really seen pop at linebacker since really Cody Simon blitzed against Minnesota, or I got a deep cut for you, Kayvon Pope playing the pass against Oregon in 2021, where it's like, oh, we do have somebody who knows how to drop back and bat the ball down. So this one guy who's long away from this team, but yeah, it's been a while, so it sounds good. I want to ask you a little more about the linebacker. Yeah, we know about Sonny Styles, we know about C.J. Hicks. Gabe Powers has been a guy where we had to check and see, like, oh, he's still on the roster. Okay, cool, he's still here. And Arvell Reese, the young freak show, out of Cleveland. Did you get any bits of those guys? And you see anything from them? And also, too, is this the time where Jim Knowles will finally just let guys go, maybe have a Jack in there and just really let the athletes run?
So we didn't get to see a bunch of them because most of the first team, so the way that they split it up is obviously there are two fields. Most of the field on the other side was the second team defense against, the second team offense, and the fourth against the fourth, versus we got the first and the third on our side for most of the time. So I didn't get to really watch them a ton. It kind of seems like they're trying to figure out who their most important backup pieces are at certain positions. Gabe and Arvell, obviously both super talented players, but they're kind of trying to tinker with and figure out, okay, if something were to happen to one of our linebackers, who goes in? How do we adjust? They're obviously doing similar things with the O-line. They tried out a couple different combinations there. But I think when you look at linebacker specifically, it's pretty clear that those top three have separated themselves. And, it's going to take probably the Akron game. It'll be, as we go through the first half of the season where it's probably a lot of snooze fests, you'll see those guys in there, and I think they will get rotated in. As for your question about the Jack, I think that's super interesting. I would assume that at some point we will start to see it. They're not going to experiment with it day one because I don't think there is a natural fit immediately. But I think they're going to try out a few players over there and see, at least get some tape on it out there. Like, hey, this is, if you come to Ohio State to play Jack, this is what it's going to look like. But I don't think that our base defense is going to involve the Jack by any means. I think it's just, hey, we have 11 NFL bodies. Let's let them go make plays.
Another year that goes by where we're going to be questioning, does the Jack exist? I call it the kiss of death. If they put a position that doesn't actually exist on the defense next to your name and call you the starter, the way they list 12 starting defenders every year, I'm like, oh man, this guy's not gonna play.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because sometimes they used to list, when we had really good safety depth, they would list 3 safeties, or they would list 3 corners in a base defense, which I don't think we run base nickel anymore.
Yeah, if we're just lying on the depth chart, start Ron James at fullback.
I do have a fun tidbit for you there. I ran into Patrick Gerd at the Memorial, and apparently he's been playing some fullback. So that could be a fun wrinkle.
I got some stiff competition. Maybe I'm gonna have to be the backup fullback.
Yeah.
Then.
There you go. I mean, still a roster spot though, right? We have 105 scholarships next year. Let it run.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to be an honorary walk-on after they reduce the scholarship limit, increase the scholarship limit, reduce the roster size. I want to get to my favorite segment of the show, our sponsored SFE propaganda of the day. Talk to me about the wide receivers. What did you see out of there? I heard Brandon Ennis is healthy and out there reminding everyone why he was the only 5-star in the Big Ten last year. What did you see out of the wide receiver room?
Yeah, your ones are pretty set, so we'll get into that in a second. Brandon flashed a lot. It's pretty clear that after the 3, and he's definitely going to rotate in there, all over the place as they try to keep guys fresh. I think they desperately want Jaden Ballard to be the 5. I don't know that that's going to work out. It may be Bryson Rogers. It may be, there are plenty of guys that are, nipping right at his heels trying to take that job from him. I think that's who they want basically in that 5 is like, your field stretcher burner role that Jamison Williams used to play for us that he was so great at. But, again, it's up to him to take that. But when you talk about the starting 3, Emeka Egbuka's first-round draft pick if he left last year, so there's no need to discuss what he is. Carnell Tate is going to make some poor DB2's life absolute hell. Like, I don't know how you cover him. Even with the DBs that we have, they struggled at times trying to cover him, and it was Denzel at times when, that he doesn't need a resume boost of any kind. Denzel Burke would have been a first-round pick last year. The quality of those two allows me to explain to you what we saw from Jeremiah Smith. If he's not the 1, you don't have a 1 because everything he does looks like an NFL receiver. It doesn't make sense. I've never seen anything like it. I understand Ryan's trying to keep the lid on this thing and not put the aspirations of the world on this young kid's shoulders. But it's like someone dropped 20-year-old Julio Jones onto Ohio State's roster. It doesn't look real. Like the things that he's able to do don't look real if you're 23, 24, 25 years old. He's 19?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where by year 2, he's going to be totally bored. There's going to be nothing left that we have for him. It's like Marv last year. What were we teaching Marvin Harrison Jr. by the middle of there's nothing to teach him. He's
how to come back to the ball when it's underthrown.
Do we want to teach him that? Is that an NFL skill that he's going to need?
I mean, have you seen some of these quarterbacks getting paid? He might need to learn that.
Look, I'm not saying that right now he's better than Emeka Egbuka. I don't think he is. But by the middle to the end of the season, when you look at who teams are truly afraid of, I think there's a strong chance that it's Jeremiah Smith, which you got to remember, Marv sat behind Jackson and Garrett and Chris and had his breakout in the Rose Bowl. And then the following season, he was, what we grew to know as Marvin Harrison Jr. This kid's coming in with that kind of expectation. And day 1, they're basically sitting there saying, hey, buddy, congrats, you're playing X. Go get him.
Do you feel like the coaching staff has a decision to make as far as the identity of this offense? Because, I mean, you would imagine that Will Howard fits more what they're trying to do in the run game and the short game. But, I mean, you've made your bread and butter off of recruiting the top wide receivers in the country and having a dynamic pass offense. And then 2 years in a row, you're going to trot out the guy with questions about his arm and accuracy, whether it be Kyle and his accuracy or ability to extend the play, or this year with Will. I mean, he does a lot of things well, but it's pretty consistent that the thing that he struggles with the most is pushing the ball downfield. Do you think that becomes a concern or a point of contention with the wide receivers that they opt to go with the guy that has less arm?
I don't think it'll matter. The reason that I don't think it'll matter is they're going to dominate so thoroughly in that 0 to 15 yard spot that a lot of these plays that, you look at an RPO with a slant attached to it, any one of those 3 guys, or you can throw Brandon in there too, if you give them a step, they're gone. Like that room has built out so well that you don't need your traditional deep threat to get 80 yards on a play. And
so
I
believe that you think these guys can take a slant to the house? Because, I mean, with Emeka, I personally, I mean, Carnell, we haven't really seen it. I know Carnell is one of those people that people forget how fast he is because he's so tall. He's a strider, and it doesn't look like he's flying until he takes off. Emeka, he's been hurt in past, so we haven't really been able to see a healthy Emeka take that speed. And I don't know about Brandon Ennis completely being able to crib a slant, and then Jeremiah track guy, so we see it there. So I'm excited to see it because it feels like that's something that the offense has lacked since maybe an Olave, that our ability to just, I mean, Marv, he normally took the top off the defense over the top, not really crib a slant type of guy. So do you think that's a new element of the offense that we're going to see big plays off of short passes?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is going to be because of who the running backs are and the threat at QB to run. There's, one of the limitations of having a Kyle McCord isn't necessarily anything that's his fault. He's just not a runner. And, you don't need to account for him in the run game at all. Notre Dame did so by leaving one guy off on the last play of the game. Thank you for that. But other than that,
Marcus Freeman throwing us a bone to his own water.
Trust my guy, Marcus, great dude. But it's funny to watch because if we figure out, if the offensive line gets together and figures itself out in any meaningful capacity, you're just going to be able to run at will on basically anyone. The only team on our schedule that I don't think you can just line up and run the ball at will against is probably Michigan, and that's because the interior of that D-line is an NFL D-line. Against just about anybody else, until you get to like a Georgia or maybe a Texas. I mean, those are really the only lines that you're worried about running against. Whereas, we've thrown for the sake of throwing for years. I think they're going to be able to throw just because they want to now. And it's going to be easy. Everything's going to get easier for them because the identity is going to be so much based on we are a power run team first. You can't stop this. We'll throw the ball whenever we see fit. It will look kind of similar to Michigan last year, except for on the offensive side, there's just so many more explosive weapons at wide receiver and even tight end than they had last year.
Did you see any 22 personnel packages at practice yesterday? Do you think that's something that we see at all?
I'm trying to remember if I did. I don't remember seeing it. I did want to see Chip will bust out at some point. We didn't get to see it yesterday, but at some point we will get the Will Howard Q Trey backfield, and I'm super excited to see it because, good Lord, what do you do there? I posted a clip of it yesterday. It's hard to tell because obviously the defense is not hitting anybody, but the speed at which Quinshon Judkins moves is just, there are some guys that are different. That dude's just different.
Yeah, and when you said Q and Trey in the backfield, I was like, yeah, they haven't seen nothing like that yet. So really just hold that secret, man. Don't let people know what Chip Kelly's planning because I'm ready to go at any time. But I have a quick question on these receivers. I remember last season I was very critical, and a lot of people are very critical of how sharp the receivers were going down the stretch. I mean, Brian Hartline, he had a lot more on his plate, and guys just getting into their routes, getting separation was stuff that started to come in question, especially later in the season. I feel like Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis is an injection of like, this is what these guys do. They're route runners. They get open. They cut off a dime. They get open. They create separation. And Brian Hartline is now, his job is back to just receivers. Do you feel like, there's a chip in this room maybe coming off last year, even though they had the number 3 pick, a lot of people were criticizing them. And do you feel like these guys are just that next level of sharpness that maybe we didn't see last year?
Yeah, I think that so often whenever you have receiver rooms or any room really that's this good, it's the tier 2 guys that you're really looking for something from. I think we know what Emeka is. He's kind of alone in that tier 1. He is your established alpha, has been there, done that. I think by the end of the season, Jeremiah will absolutely be there. The question basically is, when you look at Carnell and Brandon, are they going to be firm tier 2 guys where, against any DB2 in America, they're a total mismatch? Or are they going to be, the guys that we think they can be, where they're mismatched no matter who you put them against? And you're going to have to basically pick your poison against whoever, if all 4 of them are out there, whether it's 3 of them out there, whether it's Quinshon or Trey in the backfield, that's another, threat that you've got to consider. I think when you look at, Carnell and Brandon specifically, it seems to be Carnell that's just a half step ahead of where Brandon is at the moment. But I think all 4 of those guys are going to be in and out of the lineup as they see fit, as they try to attack certain matchups, or, you look at a certain coverage that, one guy particularly runs routes better than another for, unit specific cases. But it's a super interesting room top to bottom, just because I don't know that we've had 4 deep this good since probably 2021.
Who would you say was your most outstanding player or MVP from yesterday? Someone that really jumped out to you that maybe you didn't really expect. I mean, I asked you yesterday, like, who are your sleepers for camp? And like, there's people in the chat saying Jeremiah, like
No,
a name that people wouldn't expect to hear. Maybe someone that's not exactly pegged to be a starter this year, but flashed on the field yesterday, or someone that stood out to you that caught your eye.
James Peoples. It's you know, the major concern that we have right now with our running back room is basically the depth was vacated as soon as right as soon as Quinshawn decided to transfer, right, and Trey decided to come back. The depth in that room vanished, and you basically needed somebody. Famously, you know, at the end of the Georgia game, CJ was out there with Xavier Johnson, you know, who was like RB4 on that roster, and you know, you were down 2 wide receivers and down 2 tight ends and multiple alignment. When you look at basically the empire that collapsed around him, you realize just how important your depth is, especially as we add potentially 2 more games to a season. I think if needed, James Peoples will be ready. Do I know that he's ready to carry the load for like 2014 Zeke? No, I don't think anybody on that roster is really ready for that. I think in tandem, Q and Trey can handle it. But, you know, when you're looking at somebody that will flash for you this year and give you a whole lot of excitement going forward, I think James Peoples is that guy.
Staying in that running back room, we've kind of bounced around this guy and haven't quite touched on him. Quinshawn Judkins now plays for the Buckeyes. I mean, we haven't quite talked about him yet, so I want to hear about it. What does he look like in person? Is he as good as advertised? Just the floor is yours. Just get me hyped up.
I don't know that he's your traditional running back. It's a lot like watching Jahmyr Gibbs when he was at Bama, and before that, where he can play running back in a traditional sense, but it's just offensive weapon. You know, whether you go back to the days of like a Paris Campbell or Curtis Samuel, where you could basically do whatever you want to with them. Again, we have a few of these guys that just transferred in that just move at a different speed. He's one of them. It's shocking to watch in person just how explosive he is. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense
and I keep hearing this word explosive. Does it feel like, and Goj just commented in the chat that he looks like a bodybuilder. Do you feel like he's transformed his body and taken a step athletically and explosively since getting to Ohio State? Do you feel like you're seeing a different level of explosion? Because we noted yesterday that the Quinshawn that we were seeing at the end of the year is Quinshawn that's taking, you know, Zeke Elliott type of load throughout the year in the SEC as far as carries. And, you know, we've talked about dead legs in the wide receiver room. Do you think that we're going to see a more explosive Quinshawn at Ohio State taking a lighter load of carries?
Yeah, because he's not being asked to do the dirty work anymore. I think so much of, you know, the reason that Trey decided to come back is you have a backfield mate that you trust that's going to, you know, do the same things that you do. And it saves wear and tear on both of their bodies. You know, obviously Trey wanted to come back and win a natty. That's a big part of why he's back. But I think a big part of it too is Q's there to take, you know, carries whenever he's needed, goal line touches, you know, third downs, whatever they need him to do. You're not going to be asked. Nobody's going to be asked to take, you know, Zeke Elliott workloads. And yeah, you know, Ole Miss ran him to death, man. Like it was, hey, Quinshawn, we need 5. Go get us 5. We need 30. Go get us 30. That was a whole lot of their offense last year. And, you know, you can add Ole Miss to the list of teams where if a couple things break right, they could be right in the thick of that national title discussion. But he's special, man. That's a special talent at running back. And I'm super excited to see what Chip has dialed up for him because, again, him and Trey, despite both being really good running backs, kind of have a little bit different skill sets.
I feel like after all of this talk, I'm ready to run through a wall with the expectation of a national championship. It seems like anything short of that would be an absolute failure. Should Ryan Day be assessed in that manner if he were to not be able to get it done this year with all of the things that we've raved about? how much more could you possibly need if you're not able to get it done? And are you looking at him sideways if he's not, or side-eyed if you're not able to get it done this year with all of this talent? You have your head coach of the offense, your head coach of the defense, you have your experience, you had one of your greatest recruiting classes, the majority of them return. At this point, if you can't get it done, how much more do you need?
So the question that I have basically is, our fan base is very reactive. It's whatever I saw last is the most important thing in the world. And what did they see last? They saw, quite frankly, an embarrassing effort against Missouri. That's the only word for it. It's inexcusable. It cannot happen. There's no, an Ohio State team hasn't looked that lifeless in decades. There's no excuse for it. Whatever. Chalk it up as a one-off.
Do you think that was a reflection of the head coach and his approach to bowl season with leaving 3 bowl practices on the table and deciding not to use every bowl practice? Is that a trickle-down effect from the leadership of the program?
I think the better question that I have is, your bowl practice, so to speak, the time where you get your young guys ready should have been Youngstown State and Akron and Kent State and, all the games early in the year where, yeah, sure, you're trying to figure out, who's wide receiver 4 versus wide receiver 5. But at the same time, you just need to find these kids meaningful snaps. So, yeah, I think they did leave something on the bone there. But I think there are 3 real inflection points in the season. Obviously, at Oregon, which is a very losable game. Now, our fan base is not going to be happy to hear me say that after everything that I just said. That team is really, really, really good. And to anybody that's never really heard the stories about how loud Autzen is, it's one of the loudest places in the country. Like, it's easily in the top 5. When you look at like an LSU or, an Ohio State, when the shoe is really rocking, a whiteout at Penn State, it's in that caliber of destination that you've got to go to. They're going to travel. It's going to obviously be a super hyped game. They're not favored in that game, which, again, should tell you what is potentially going to happen there. So I think, one, if that game is a loss, even if it's a hard-fought loss, how are people, players, coaches, fans going to react to that? Michigan, that game cannot be a loss. It does not matter. That is the end-all, be-all. There could be a tsunami that floods Columbus. I do not care. Come hell or high water. I didn't say it last year because I thought that Michigan's team was right on that level. They're not this year. There is no excuse to lose that game. You cannot lose that game. You can lose to Oregon and people will be upset. If you lose to Michigan, that's an entirely different conversation. That cannot happen. Then when you look at a Big Ten title, it hasn't been in Columbus since 2020. And, you could argue that they kind of gifted us that one. If we're being totally honest, we played 5 games. That was just a, de facto COVID shortened season. There's nothing we can do about that. So if you're looking at the last real Big Ten title that Ohio State won, you're looking at 2019. It's 5 years now. That's a long time. I think that has to get done. And then when you get to the playoff, right? Let's say this team has gone to Oregon and won, beat Michigan, won the Big Ten title. If all of those things happen, then I think getting to a national championship is your barometer, because it depends on what team is on the other side, right? If you have injuries against a Georgia team.
Well, let me float a hypothetical.
Yeah.
If we get to the national championship and lose to Quinn Ewers.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be, again,
like,
this will be very toxic. I'll be on Orange Bloods tonight, so I'm sure I'll get asked about that.
They're going to be flying linemen into therapists to help the city of. I mean, they're going to be flying therapists into Columbus the way they fly in linemen after a hurricane to help the city of Columbus if we lose to Quinn Ewers in a national championship.
True, and I think, again, context is everything. I don't think anybody in Columbus is upset about losing to Bama in 2020. We chopped the head off of Clemson. That's what we came here to do. Getting the national championship and competing in any reasonable fashion was just a cherry on top. This year is very different because if you stack the chips on the table and if you just look at rosters across America, this is the best roster in the country. Now, the best roster does not always win a national title. We know this over and over again. Georgia probably had the best roster in the country last year. They didn't even make the playoff, which, again, will never happen. That's the weird part about what we're wading into is a 10-2 Ohio State is still making the playoff. Like, everything will still be to play for, but it'll feel empty and we'll feel robbed and dirty. You know, if the goal is a national championship, you want to win every game on your way through. And that's what they're preaching in the Woody. That's how everybody's approaching the season. But it's also a new world. Beating Michigan is not a prerequisite for winning a national title anymore. And as strange as that is to say out loud, it's the truth. Like,
You better do it at least once.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a new world where you're talking about, Bama losing to LSU and not necessarily needing to revenge that loss to win a national title is crazy. You know, that there are so many avenues here now where you can basically just play your best football December or January and you come out national champions. But I think this team is out to prove something. And I think what they're trying to prove is we have a strong enough culture in Columbus that's built here. We've developed the right guys. We've promoted the right coaches. We've hired the right people. We built this thing the right way, such that we can basically take in blue chip talent from anywhere, make them a part of what we do in a year, and win the whole thing, start to finish. Because I think, based on what we've talked about, the expectations is it's not just don't lose a game. It's Akron better get 65 hung on them. The bar is so high that I think, at the first sign, the first Will Howard 3rd and 7 that isn't a first down, Twitter's going to be in shambles and Juan will be calling for Ryan's head on the sideline. But, that's what we do as fans. It's hard to contextualize just how special this group can be. But again, we've never seen this particular team play on the field as a unit yet. I think that October 12th is the date that I'm circling. We circled Notre Dame last year. We'll find out what you're made of. We wanted to see, can the defense really win us games? Yeah, they did. They did that night in South Bend, and the offense needed to put together one drive. I think that's kind of, when we get to play really good teams, that those are the kinds of games that we can win. Do we want to win 17-14? Probably not. But I think they're capable of winning in more ways than last year's team or 2022 or even 2021. Going back to 2019, 2020 was the last time I think you saw a team where the offense can win you a game and the defense can win you a game.
At what point does Jim Knowles, if the offense doesn't look like what we're used to seeing at Ohio State, does he just go kicking Ryan Day's door like, what the fuck? I signed up here thinking that I would only have to hold teams to fucking 35 points and you guys can't score 28. At what point does Jim Knowles say, hey, where is the defense? I mean, where's the offense that I used to see before I took this job?
Yeah. It's again, complimentary game. When you had the video game Ohio State offense in 2022, when they were just chucking the ball all over the yard and CJ looked like, CJ, it puts so much stress on your defense when they're out there for 42 minutes a game. I think Michigan found something last year where they basically said, hey, we'll give you all the threes in the world that you want. As long as we force you to earn your sevens and we bleed clock the entire way through, you're not going to have enough time. And they were right. I think this offense is much more suited to play that style of game than last year's was. But again, it's the questions about the defense have never been, are they great against Iowa and Nebraska and Wisconsin and Penn State? They always have been. The question is, can you be great against Oregon, Michigan, Georgia, Texas, Bama? Those are the only questions we have left to answer.
Right there. And as you talked about earlier, with the pressure going on this season, I just feel like, touching on things that you touched on, Ohio State and Ryan Day have kind of backed themselves into a wall where it's almost you really can't lose a game. You think about going to Oregon that week. We all know the hype that's coming to Oregon. We've known what they've done. They're pulling some of the best players out of Ohio. You lose that game, even if it's, say, you still get the Big Ten, that momentum now shifts that Oregon might be the best team in the Big Ten. Like, that is a huge jump for them. I know it's their first game, their first big-time game in the Big Ten, but I just feel the presence around that game. Michigan game, I feel like on years, if you lost that game 2 years ago and we won a natty, and no one's talking about that game. It's like, yeah, we're the best in the country, and, you lucked up on us one time. Losing that game 3 in a row, you still can't do that, even if you have a natty. And then, like Ron said, you go down there and lose to a Texas with Quentin Ewers at quarterback. I really feel like coming into this season, Georgia is really the only team where people will kind of have some give on, like, okay, we're matched up with them. There's some we're going to come across a lot, going forward with Alabama now supposedly taking a step back. We'll see if that happens, but they're kind of the big dog on top, and it's like that's the one you're going to take down. I feel like that's really the only loss, not even on the schedule, that people will accept. Do you two feel that way?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the only team where there is an excuse is the wrong word. In 2022, when we played Georgia that close, right? Even the most eternal Buckeye optimist did not expect us to play that well. There were people that thought we could win that game, but they didn't think we could win that game looking like that. I think it's going to be a very similar outcome. I think people would basically say, okay, that's the machine. We lost the machine. So be it.
I'll push back on that a little bit because I feel like at some point, if we were to lose to Georgia, Ohio State would be one of the most instrumental programs in them becoming a dynasty. We let them win a national championship because we have fucking Parker Fleming on staff and aren't able to kick a field goal. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's not like we weren't capable of winning these games. Even though people didn't give us a chance going into Georgia, we went out there and showed that we were just as capable as winning that game, to the point that Kirby Smart said they shouldn't have even won. And now we're going to give Ryan Day an excuse for giving them their third natty in 4 years. I'm sorry. I would have to jump off of that train of giving Ryan Day an excuse or bailing him out for losing to Georgia. At what point are we Ohio? We can't come up here and say that we're Ohio State. We want to recruit the top classes, spend millions of dollars, and be like, well, we're not Georgia. Like, at what point are we then? Like, are we on that level or are we not? And if not, we need to shut the fuck up and say, look the other way when Georgia's talking. Look the other way when the Alabamas are talking, because we're not them. So if we're giving an excuse to Ryan Day to lose to Georgia, shut the fuck up when you're talking to Alabama and Georgia fans, because clearly we don't view ourselves in the same light because we don't think we're good enough to beat them, and we give our coach an excuse for that.
I don't think it's so much about an excuse, right? You watched Tressel win a natty in the most difficult way possible and then get to several others, and what happened in those games happened in those games. You watched Urban win the toughest national title, and then there were a couple, fuck Michigan State forever,
but at the same time, those guys were having heartbreaking losses in national championships, but at least don't have. Michigan didn't win a national championship on either one of their watches.
See, and that's
what I'm saying. At what point do we completely look at the resume and say, you're not beating our fucking rival? There hasn't been a legitimate Big Ten championship in Columbus since 2019. This guy gets more excuses and more passes than anyone I know. And I think Ryan Day is a great man. I think the things that he's improved at Ohio State, the investment in caring about his players' health and caring about them as human beings, is to be applauded. But at some point, we're here to win football games and championships. And if the standard is not championships and we're just looking to occasionally beat our rival and maybe our grandkids will see Ohio State take the all-time record over Michigan. We were on pace to do it in like 2028, and now we just gave them 3 wins. I don't know how many more passes that, like, in a vacuum, when we look at one of those things, losing to Georgia or losing to an Alabama, fine. But when it becomes you can't beat SEC teams, you're leaving things on the table when it comes to bowl losses. You're taking embarrassing bowl losses and just like, oh, well, we're not competing for a natty. It's not that big of a deal. At what point do you have the level of urgency? There's 327 people watching this show, and we're 30 days away from us playing football. I don't think anybody watching this show, I don't think the people that spend their hard-earned money to come watch them have an underwear practice are okay with just, oh, well, Ryan Day tried his best.
No, it's got to look a certain way. When we like kind of categorize the losses, like Missouri is unforgivable. There's a team can't look like that ever. I think the reason that Georgia in 22 was a forgivable loss, one, the defense was not championship caliber, and we knew that. We knew that going in. We'd hoped that Knowles would shore some of it up, but that defense was not national championship caliber, and honestly, CJ deserved better. But when you look at this year, when you have the avenue to win games the way that they do with the stable of running backs they have and the freakazoids at wide receiver and the defense that you have, last year's built-in excuse and kind of, for the fan base, for whoever was, it's on Kyle. It has to be on Kyle. Everything else is there, right? That theory is absolutely going to be tested because I don't know if you have a more talented QB than you had last year. They can certainly do more stuff.
But again, how is that not on Ryan Day? How is that? Ryan Day recruited Kyle McCord. Ryan Day was in charge of developing Kyle McCord. Ryan Day recruited Devin Brown. Devin Brown was a 5-star. You're a quarterback guru. How is he not ready to play 3 years in? Is that a miss on evaluation? Is that a miss on development? You brought in Will Howard. If he's not the guy to get it done, again, you didn't develop Devin Brown. You went out and got another guy. He still wasn't the guy. At what point does he take accountability for all of those things? I think Kyle was unfairly the scapegoat. Ryan Day brought him here. At the end of the day, Kyle went out there and did his best at what he was asked to do. There's someone that got paid $8 million last year to put Kyle out there in that position and bring him to Ohio State and tell everybody that he was the guy. So again, unfairly, Kyle's in Syracuse now. Who's going to be the new scapegoat? At what point does the finger have to be pointed at Ryan Day?
I think it has to be Michigan, especially this year. That's where it's got to be one of those. That game in particular, one, we're all horrified that it's going to play out to be close like last year. Remember when we did that preview and I was like, I just fucking know that these assholes are going to put me in a position to be worried, hat in hand, heart falling out of chest in the fourth quarter. Instead, if we get raced, we get raced by anybody, right? It's not your day, whatever. You can, it sucks and you don't want to live that. But it's almost worse to be in the game and feel that moment. You can basically move on with your life preeminently if that game's over early. Stands through that fourth quarter and see a number that starts with a 4 or a 5 on our side, and it better be 2 or below on the other. I think they want blood, and if you don't give it to them, and there are creaks and rattles as you build this team out. Because again, you don't want to be the best team in week 1. If you're the best team in week 1, you win absolutely jack. You need to be the best team week 13 and beyond. And if we're not this year, then that's where I think you can take a hammer to a lot of what's being done because you've assembled talent that basically no one else has. The only comparable roster in America is Georgia. Texas, super talented. Oregon, super talented. When you assess the job that they're going to do this year, I think that has to play a role in it. This is for the first time since we've had Ryan Day as our coach. They are unequivocally a top 2 team in America, roster, top to bottom. There's no one that you can sit there and say is absolutely better. I think Georgia's in their class. The last time that we said that about an Ohio State team was probably 2019. LSU goes on a generational run. We never got to see that game, so I'll throw that one out. But before that, the last time we said that was 2015. And, we don't talk about that season for obvious reasons, but they won the one before that, so it doesn't matter. This one matters because you didn't get it done in 23. You didn't get it done in 22 or 21 or 20 when you got right to the doorstep, or 19 or 18. You run it all the way back. It's not necessarily about this team and what they accomplish. It's about giving the fan base what they want. And what they want is they want to see you go into Oregon and physically dominate them. They want to see you invite Michigan into your house and skull drag them. They want to see you play toe-to-toe with Georgia straight up without the trick plays and the fake punts. They want that game to look the way that they want it to look. They want their identity back. And that identity for the years that, and I think they have the ability to do that this year. It's on them to do it.
Absolutely. So I want to get 3 predictions from you before we get out of here to set the stage for the season receiving.
I think it's going to be in Mecca, but I think it'll be close. I think Carnell and JJ are going to push him, but I think Will Howard.
Who's the starting quarterback?
Yeah.
Will Howard. You're right there with him?
I wanted to ask earlier.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask earlier because I have the feeling, and we talked about this all summer. I felt like there's more separation with Devin Brown and Will Howard off the field than there probably is on the field. But I was not at practice, and that is something I did want to ask. Did you feel that? And I'm not just talking about who throws the prettiest ball, I'm talking intangibles, I'm talking leadership, just the vibe you get from the overall guy. Did you feel like the separation is really there, or are we just saying Will Howard because he's making seven figures, hanging out in Columbus?
It's pretty apparent that he's the guy. In the spring game, you can look into practice, and you can see highlights of stuff. It's more how he's interacting with people. I mean, in his mind, the way that everybody's interacting with him, it's his job. And kind of we didn't see that as much with Kyle last year. It was more so, hey, we're gonna open this thing up, and he had an extra year in the system. There's a whole lot of other outside factors at play there, but when you look at how Will Howard operates versus how Devin Brown does, Devin Brown looks like he's still trying to prove that it's his job. Will Howard is operating as though it's already his. And the guys around him are reacting in similar manners. The first team reps were almost entirely Will. Devin did get in there a couple times, and again, throws a really pretty ball. It's on air for the most part, so it's going to look good. It's tough for me to say that Devin Brown will win this job only because Will Howard wouldn't be there. Because you have, Julian Sand and Aaron Noland and Lincoln behind him. It's just.
You find it odd that they clearly feel some sort of way about Devin Brown, but then it's been so close with the two people that they've chose to replace him. So it's like, what is going on? Like, are you wondering what is happening there that it seems so close every year, but there's something that's holding him back? If you had to speculate, if you had to guess, it felt like he's been completely in a quarterback battle, and it seems apparent both years that he's close, but there's something holding him back.
Yeah, it's spot, right? The guy that came in this year has years of starting experience. You can't, there's no way to replicate that. Sure, it's not at Ohio State, but basically embracing, what it takes to be the face of a program. Last year, I think, was a little bit different because he added an element that Kyle just didn't have, right? And so if you're Ryan Day, historically, your quarterback has not been a statue. The last one was Haskins, and he was a statue, but he was a killer too.
Generational statue.
Yeah, generational statue. Build the statue. But it kind of takes that kind of talent if you're going to be a pure pocket passer, as in we can't even pretend to run zone reads with you every now and then. I think it's tough. I think Devin just got backed into a bad spot, and just hasn't quite done enough, because if you start as the 2, you have to beat out the 1, right? It's one of those situations where if we brought in, whoever it is, let's say we had brought in Cam Ward, for example, right? Cam Ward is going to be expected to be the 1. The only way you're going to get that job is if you beat him out, because if they felt that you had that job on lock and they weren't worried, he wouldn't be there.
No, I agree. I just feel like, and I believe Will Howard will be the starter. I just feel like from the things I've heard, especially coming out of spring ball, I mean, Ron was at practice. Everyone coming out of spring who saw how they play said, yeah, Devin Brown was the best quarterback today. We've gone through a summer where coaches haven't been there. They've been recruiting, guys haven't practiced, and we step into practice 1 of training camp, and it's like, well, Will Howard's the guy. It's just like, it feels like it's the trust of Ryan Day that's really held Devin Brown back. I mean, we know the calamity of last season and the reports that came out from there. That just for me, it just felt like there's something about Devin Brown and that type of quarterback that he just does not trust, and he can't quite get over that. That's just the analysis I would give for it.
Which seems apparent that we've now seen someone come in from another program that Ryan Day did not develop, did not pick out of high school, and was able to earn Ryan Day's trust in 7 months.
I mean, he
Yeah.
doesn't really have a choice. That's
Well,
his
the
two
thing is,
options.
I think so much of this is going to be, historically it's been Ryan's show where it's, Ryan's going to pick his quarterback. I think more than ever, your OC has a lot of pull here. I think this decision is going to be more Chip's than it is Ryan's. And I think that where Will Howard is now tells you a lot about what he thinks of Devin Brown. And if they're both on the fence about Devin Brown being their starter, that's a problem given that game 1 is 4 weeks from now. Yeah, I think that you can basically let this play into the season as they did last year. Again, everybody and their mother was like, it's going to be Devin Brown. No, it was never going to be Devin Brown because if Devin Brown was going
to Ryan Day absolutely told Devin Brown he was the starter, named him, and got feet.
I know.
So
I know.
I mean, this idea that Devin Brown has never been named the starter. Ryan Day.
No, I'm saying it was never going to be Devin Brown at Notre Dame.
Starter privately and got cold feet after one bad practice. So this idea that Ryan Day has never been ready.
No, it's not about that he never did. I'm saying it was never going to be him at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I mean, he may have started week 1. There may have been some, it would have been one of those, and a lot of these people are old enough to remember this. It's going to have to be one of those Justin Swick, Troy Smith things where it's like, oh, that dude's just different. Which again, Justin was a 5-star, big, huge recruit for us, and Troy came in and absolutely kicked his ass whenever he got out. So if they give Devin a shot, I think that's what it's going to take to really kind of push the wheel in his direction. Will they give him a shot to do it? I have no idea. It kind of seems like it's going to be Will Howard's show. We're riding with 18 just like we did last year. Offensive game plan, 18, save us.
So we know who our quarterback is. The final prediction before we get out of here. Does 18 hold the national championship above his head?
Yes, this is the year.
Q, is this the year?
Man, I almost have to buy into the hype now. I think with our discussion earlier of just when I brought up Georgia, there's a reason I did that. I feel like Kirby Smart is the one guy right now with the landscape who has proven he has one up on Ryan Day. Every little thing that I criticize Ryan Day for, Kirby Smart does right. He talk about playing young players. He does it right. You saw in that Florida State game, he was going hard until 2 minutes left. So he's at the 5th string quarterback, and he's getting more reps than Devin Brown and Lincoln Kindholes and in one game got more reps than they got all season. He just has those little things figured out. But I'm with you, Ron, on one time, Ryan Day has kind of screwed himself by proving he can go toe-to-toe with Kirby Smart with not a great Ohio State team, I feel like. We feel like that 2022 team had a lot of holes in it. He went toe-to-toe with this juggernaut Georgia team that they say they had. So I will say yes right now, but Ryan Day has to prove a lot this season. He has to get those little things right that he hasn't done in seasons before. And I mean, he even lied to me in space and said he plays young players when I told Jay Book to ask that question.
He lied at the media days too when they asked him about it, bro. I haven't seen a Euro step like that since the NBA All-Star game when he gets asked about playing younger players. Ryan Day will sit there and bold-faced lie to your face, even though the stats show you out of the top 10 teams in the country, no one plays their younger players less than Ohio State. But let Ryan Day tell you they play.
I got one question in my career to ask Ryan Day, and he bold-faced lied to me.
Here's what I think is interesting about this season in particular. Every year there's a narrative around the teams that compete at the top end, right? When Clemson was going through their run, it was, well, can Trevor Lawrence be Deshaun Watson? When Bama was in their run, it's always, oh, who's the quarterback and running back going to be? Are they going to be good enough this year? Until they started recruiting 5-star after 5-star after 5-star at QB. With this team, there's going to be one thing that we can talk about. And if I start this, sorry, Ryan, in advance for what I'm about to say. You have the opportunity to vanquish every narrative possible about who you are, about what this team and this program can be in one season. You go to Oregon. You can stomp their throat out before they become a Big Ten power. You have Michigan at home. They've won the last 3 Big Ten titles. Take your shit back. You then have a Big Ten title game against probably either Oregon, Penn State, one of the two, more than likely, if not Michigan again. Again, check box number 3. And then if the two best teams in America, as we see it playing out right now, are Georgia and Ohio State, you will either play them in a quarterfinal, a semifinal, or God forbid, the national championship is in Atlanta, Georgia. If you are going to go make a statement anywhere, doing anything, winning a national title in Georgia's backyard against Georgia is how you ruin that narrative forever. There will be nothing to be said. And the reason that I bring that up is people used to say the same thing about Kirby Smart forever. It was Kirby Smart can't beat Nick Saban. He can't win the big one. Guys, he didn't beat Nick Saban the last time he played him. Nick Saban beat him more often than not. The only reason that narrative is gone is because he did it in a national championship game with the world watching. That's what we remember. The last time they played on the field, Nick Saban beat him. It wasn't that long ago. It was in December. If you want to change the narrative about big game Ryan, or what does a Ryan Day team look like? Are you tough enough? Can you not beat your rival anymore? Has the game passed you by? Is Oregon the next power in the Big Ten? Are you afraid to compete with Georgia? You can knock all of those off in 1 year. It takes 16 games to get there. You're going to have to win all of them in a row, which, again, no one has ever done before because we've never played 16 games before. But if you want the opportunity to craft your narrative and write your story, our boosters assembled a roster that Thanos would be proud of. We have the Infinity Gauntlet. Run the table.
Yeah, I mean, I saw people say in the chat, if Ryan Day doesn't get it done, you can't let him go. There's too much talent on this roster. Who are you going to get better? I'm like, how many coaches in America wouldn't trade their entire situation for everything that Ryan Day was given this year?
It's hard.
Because under that ideology, that would make you believe that Ryan Day's the only coach in America that could win at Ohio State, and I find that hard to believe.
No, I think of the elite coaches in America, right? There's always the known quantities. You have your Kirby now. When he was hired at Georgia, he wasn't a known quantity. Saban was a known quantity, obviously. I think Brian Kelly was a pretty known quantity because winning at Notre Dame is hard, given what the academic restrictions look like there. And, he's trying to get it turned around at LSU in terms of defense. That's an entirely different story. But when you look at these elite coaches, right, they're all made at wherever their programs flourish. Like Dabo was a special teams coordinator. Like I think there's all of these guys made themselves wherever they are. So I think that what they're not so subtly telling you is we would basically go try to hire somebody that's going to try to build their thing out at Ohio State like anybody else would. There's no proven commodity short of, you get a Les Miles to come in or a Nick Saban or somebody that's done it before. Bob Stoops, I know, was floated around that. I never really bought much into that. But it's, there is validity to that argument. At the same time, this roster, we haven't had many like this. This one is pretty far and clear above and beyond. You have the right OC and DC. That's not a question. There's no Ed Warner, Tim Beck situation that you're worried about.
There's only one person to point the finger at this year.
Yeah,
there's no excuses this year. I mean, you have so much talent returning on defense. You have all the talent on offense. You have a loaded running back room. I mean,
I told him yesterday.
Get anyone in a transfer. I mean, you went out and got a transfer on the offensive line. You feel secure with your offensive line. There's no excuses this year. We have to get it done.
I told Coach yesterday. I told him, I was like, look, we need rings this year, man. And I think he said under his breath, don't we fucking know it?
I hope so. I hope they know it because I can get broke.
Oh, they know.
Into my Twitter if he doesn't see enough.
Oh, they do. Oh, they know.
Check it out.
Oh, they know. So Adam King, who hosts stuff for 10 TV and does a bunch of Buckeye stuff also, was the presenter for Ryan yesterday. And as soon as they kind of left the room and, it was just his show kind of closing things out, he said, talking to everybody here, I'm not going to say it in front of Coach, but we all know it. He said, "Natty, you're bust." And that's the phrase. Every year there's kind of the catchphrase that they use. And I think early on thus far, it's been rebuild the foundation. But I think when they find when they find who they are and who this team can be is an all-time great college football team, not just an all-time great Ohio State team. We're talking really, really lofty goals here for what this team can be. And I just don't think that we've had a team with expectations like that in a while. If they don't get it done this year, I think it would be devastating in a manner that not getting it done in years past really hasn't been, but it compounds, right? You don't win in 21, you got to win in 22. You don't win in 22, you got to win in 23. Well, if you don't win in 21, 22, or 23, and then you assemble this kind of roster, that noise is going to be deafening. Obviously, October 12th, the big date, and then there's a game on November 30th, man, and the entire world will be watching what you do and how you respond that day.
I feel like LSU, being LSU in 2019, completely bailed Ohio State out for their failures in that season.
Oh, yeah.
We had 2 Heisman finalists, and one of them was not our 2,000-yard rusher.
Yeah. And
think about that.
You know what that wide receiver room looked like, too.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you get into these thoughts of, you start believing the SEC hype, but it just means more. You start believing what Michigan tells you when they say you're soft, because you look at a team like that and say, I had 2 Heisman finalists, I had a 2,000-yard rusher, first round draft picks all over the team, and we couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you can't get it done then, and sometimes you're looking at the roster like, is this roster better than that one? And this year you're like, it is. So if they don't get it done then, it's like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. On paper, this roster is better. Now, again, are you going to have what we had that year where Jamison Williams was basically a borderline deep threat only for us? Like, they put him in to put the finishing touches on a 49-point drubbing of Clemson. Like that was about it. But it's I'm not going to say, we're not going to try to make excuses, because the expectation is that you win every game at Ohio State. There is no acceptable loss, so to speak. But when you have the firepower that you have here, you're not just talking about wanting to win. Now it's got to look a certain way, and that's where it can kind of get into dudes' heads, especially the younger guys that haven't been there and done that. But in talking to, a Seth McLaughlin and talking to a Caleb Downs and, just interacting with these guys, it's kind of crazy what they say about Ohio State's program relative to an Alabama, which has been the standard forever and ever and ever. When you look at what Chip is going to do offensively, that's something that Ryan has never had the ability to lean on. And I think that is going to, the question that we've always wanted answered, especially our boy Ron, is, can Ryan Day be a CEO? Well, he's never really had the opportunity to do that. He's always been CEO/president. Now we're going to find out, can you be a pure CEO? And we'll see if he thrives in that role, because his president's his mentor. It's kind of crazy, because Chip Kelly is picking Ryan Day's quarterback, and Ryan Day was Chip Kelly's quarterback.
The good choice.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you guys have fired up NCAA 25, I'm sure, at this point, and spent God knows how many hours ignoring calls, messages, DMs, doing whatever as we recruit, grinding our way through Dynasty or RTG. But handing the controls of the Ohio State offense as constructed this time is literally like giving someone a video game. It's absurd. It doesn't make sense. This is even above, some of the Alabama rosters that we saw in years past. There's just never been this many new pieces added to something that was already built, especially, you look at like Caleb on the defense, but offensively, you add in a Quinshon Judkins. Jeremiah Smith is basically expected to be your X from day one. Your quarterback transferred in from Kansas State. The center that snapped him the ball came here from Alabama. You've got all of this chaos offensively, and you have this madman in Chip Kelly that now you're handing this controller to. And I'm just excited to see what they make out of it, because if it works out the way that I think it can work out, Ron's going to have to shut the fuck up for 16 weeks.
I tell people this all the time. I want to come on here and talk shit, but instead I'm in here complaining because we're getting shit on by Michigan fans. Oregon thinks they're the king of the Big Ten. I just want to get on here and talk my shit that we're the best. But after 3 years of getting skull drugged by Michigan, I have to shut the fuck up and talk about my own team because I can't even talk shit to other teams because I got to worry about these motherfuckers.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this, guys. Anybody that follows any of the players that follow me, Jack, if you're watching this, that's why you've got to do it. You need to win the national title this year so Ron can talk shit again.
Exactly, bro. I know you guys lift. You guys do it for the rings. You want to go to the NFL, but think about Ron. Maybe I need to give the pregame speeches like, bro, they're going to talk crazy to me. Y'all got to go out there and do it for me. Cut this up, send it to the team, start playing it in Woody, get it on all the screens. Let them know Ron James needs y'all.
Let Ron talk shit again. We got to bring that.
I'm with you. I just feel happy because I feel like this is finally the first time where this team is almost idiot proof of screwing it up by making the same mistakes of the past. The offensive line is already put together. We got linebackers who can finally play the pass. Maybe
that's the other thing. I don't have anything to complain about. Like, there's literally no one that's about to get on the field that I'm like, fourth quarter, why the fuck Cajun? Like, there's literally like even the backups. Like, put Malik Hartford in the field. I don't have anything to say. Like, this is the first time where not only is every position solidified, the depth on this team is just ridiculous. There's just no more excuses. There's no more scapegoats. There's no more Matt Barnes. There's no more Kerry Combs. There's no more Cal McCord. There's no more COVID. Nothing. We are here. It is now or never. It's time to get it done.
Yeah. The guy that I will tell you again, you're watching all of these future first round NFL players, and you can see it in real time. There are just a couple guys on that field that size, speed, body composition, that there's just no way to explain what they look like. Jelani Thurman is one of those. Holy fuck, dude. I don't know what lab they found him in, but we need another one.
I actually meant to ask about him earlier, but is he also idiot proof? Because we gotta get this dude
lab product, bro. They're just it's absurd. He looks like a Georgia tight end. That's that's all. Iowa probably recruited him. Like that's what we're looking at here in terms of what he can be. Not is he there yet? Not quite. Just looks the part at the moment. But man, if that light bulb goes on, whoo, buddy.
It's super exciting. This team is absolutely loaded. Coaching staff through the entire roster. It's going to be a super exciting season for Buckeye fans. There's 450 people watching us live. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Rave reviews for Anand in the chat right now. Everyone's loving the appearance. This is definitely something that we're going to do again throughout this season. We always appreciate him joining us. Appreciate everyone watching. If you're watching on Twitter, go ahead and throw a retweet and a like on the video. Drop a follow. We do this weekdays every morning at 8 a.m. We started at 9 today because our guy, Mr. Worldwide, was traveling back from Columbus back to Chicago. You're in Chicago. It's a big weekend in the city. Any appearances at Lala this weekend?
I might make an appearance for Future and Metro, but that's about it, man. I'm too old for this. It's I'll still make it out to the bar to watch the Buckeyes and hang out with the homies as people yell in my ear. But the days of standing in festival grounds are probably a little bit too far gone.
I saw the aerial shots from Chapel Road yesterday, and I was like, I'm officially old because I couldn't name a single song, and there's 80,000 people standing there watching that show right now.
I literally texted someone this morning who was Chapel Road.
That's what I said. You would have thought that she was running for president with how many
could
people
not tell you. Yeah, sorry.
Officially old, man. I am washed. Q, do you know who the hell that is?
I'm washed as well. Over the hill.
Yeah, we are officially old, but Ohio State football is here, and there are no excuses, man. We appreciate everyone tuning in. On and Q, let the people know where they can find you.
Anna, you go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me at Nanduri NFL on Twitter. I also host a show with Matt Kelly on Player Profiler called Decision Point, where we talk about NFL GMs' jobs, contracts, kind of the finance world of what, upper tier football looks like. I have a feeling that kind of as we go into this NIL space and kind of into the future of what college football looks like, there's going to be a lot of overlap there. So I hope to see a few of you in there. Obviously, if you see me out and about in Chicago, Columbus, wherever, come say hey.
The draft is Pittsburgh next year.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, yes, I will be in Green Bay next year and then Pittsburgh the year after. So
Yep.
if you see me there, come say hey too.
Absolutely. So, Q, let the people know.
Yeah, man, I'm not hard to find. I'll be City Boy Quentin on Twitter. I'm over there. Find a Johnson on Instagram, TikTok, and Minor League Films. If you're in the movies, catch me up here on YouTube as well. You want to see me talk shit about Ryan Day until he gets it done. It flips the script. I'll be here every morning at 8 a.m. on weekdays. Ron.
Yeah, if you want to see me eat crow after Ohio State wins the national championship, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Find us in our Discord. I'm sure we're going to have some fans that were at practice today come and give us a practice report in there later today. So if you need more Buckeye content, make sure that you are a member in our Discord. The link is in the description below. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at 2Ts. That's 2_TEES. Weekdays here at 8 a.m. with my guy Q and our special guests. We've had Anand, we've had Pat. We hope to keep bringing more guests on the show here going forward throughout the season. Buckeye BS Sundays, the flagship of the channel, with our guys Mike and Cam on Sundays at 10 a.m. And then the college football pregame show Saturday mornings. Start off your Saturday with me and Chris on the Menace platform, and then post games on the Bleacher Report app. So tons of content. The season is officially here. There's no more excuses for Ryan Day. It is natty or bust for the Buckeyes this season, and I can't wait to get it started. Fellas, go Bucks and O-H.
I-O.
I-O.